man. Where you from?
I was born in Long Island. Why?
Oh, Long Island. Oh, this is rich. Long Island, the famous breeding ground for bluesmen.
Ralph Macchio from The Karate Kid plays a blues guitarist chasing a legend in Crossroads, one of 4 new films we'll be reviewing this week on At the Movies, the movie review program. I'm Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times. In addition to Crossroads this week, we're also going to be reviewing Smooth Talk, starring Laura Dern as a teenager growing up unhappily in a small town. Also, Turtle Diary with Ben Kingsley and Glenda Jackson as 2 eccentrics with one thing in common, a love of giant sea turtles. First, Gene starts with a political thriller named Salvador.
Our first film, Salvador, is loosely based on tragic events in Latin America during the early part of this decade. Right-wing death squads murdered thousands, including an archbishop and 4 United States nuns. Salvador, like Under Fire and The Killing Fields before it, argues that America is guilty of complicity in those kinds of murders because our government always seems to back anyone who is simply anti-communist. That's an arguable position. It's been argued many times, but this movie argues it awkwardly and with many, many embarrassing scenes that belong maybe in a comedy, but not in a political tract. Here, the film's central figure, a freelance photographer played by James Wood, delivers the movie's message to U.S. officials.
You've been lying about the number of advisors here. You've been lying about the trainers here in TDY. You've been lying about switching so-called humanitarian assistance money to Salvadorian military coffers. And you've been lying, saying that this war can be won militarily, which it can't.
Of course it can.
Oh.
Hey, now, calm down, Boyle. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not going to listen to this wino journalist left-wing commie crap, Jack. Now, we know where this guy's sympathies lie. I don't even see what we're talking to.
Look, Richard, right. You saw Marty. Now, we know they're starting some kind of an offensive.
Hey, I'm not a spy for you guys. Left-wing colonel? Well, maybe. But I'm not a communist. And you guys never, ever seem to be able to tell the difference.
Is that a fact?
Yeah.
The body count runs high in the film as James Woods and his photographer friend John Savage trail the death squads. Savage is desperately concerned with getting risky close-up photographs.
Oh, mother.
Well, did the music tip you off as to what was going to happen? I think it sure did. That scene doesn't make much sense because if you think about it, all he got was a shot of a plane. It could be anywhere, anybody's plane. And there's a lot I don't like about Salvador, a lot more. The film celebrates photographers and takes easy pot shots at TV correspondents. The film equates the U.S. Border Patrol with right-wing death squads at the end in a wild finale. And the film includes a totally unnecessary character, a doped-up disc jockey played by Jim Belushi, who runs around either acting like a drunken fool or a scared fool. Of course, Salvador means well, but it just isn't executed well.
See, I think you missed the entire point of the movie by even starting out to talk about it as a political film. You almost make it sound like Latino or one of those films like this. This is not a political film per se. It has a lot of politics in it, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a movie about these 2 guys, Belushi and Woods, who go down to South America, and their story. It's a story of human people, of people who go into this, plunge into this situation. It's total chaos. They're irresponsible, immature, drugged half of the time. They don't know what they're doing. Nobody around them knows what they're doing.
So does that make it a good movie?
Yes, it does. It makes it a very interesting movie of these characters and what they go through.
Gee, Roger, I tell you, there is so much politics here and so much newsreel footage. I mean, the director is giving us cues all the way. Even the opening credits are using in newsreel fashion. I think that
the opening credits are newsreel fashion. The opening credits are a newsreel style of a scene that's staged later in the movie. The remarkable thing about this movie is that it doesn't have any newsreel footage in it. The entire movie was staged in a very, very effective way.
No, I say newsreel style. In other words, I'm telling you that this movie is loaded with politics. That speech we heard.
What's wrong with a movie that's it's loaded with
Nothing.
politics.
Under Fire is great, and The Killing Fields is great, and The Year of Living Dangerously is great.
And this one isn't. This movie isn't great, but it's good. It's got a lot of politics in it. It's got some interesting characters in it. They all.
I thought the Belushi character belonged maybe on Saturday Night Live, but not in this movie.
I have a feeling that people like that are just the kinds of people who would get into a car and drive to Salvador because that's where the action is.
No way. Next at the movies, a strange and shocking story of a misunderstood teenager.
I want to introduce myself. I'm Arnold Friend, and that's my real name, and that's what I want to be to you. A friend.
Smooth talk, and it's a very hard film to describe because what happens in this film is only a small part of the story, and much more important is what we feel about it and how we feel about it. And for me, at least, Gene, the questions that I had to ask coming out of the movie as to what was this movie really about. The movie stars Laura Dern, who was the blind girl in Mask, as a small-town teenager whose father is distant and vague, whose older sister is always on her case, whose mother loves her but has problems of her own. And at the age of about 14, this girl discovers boys, not sex, but just boys, who tell her that they like her. One of them even sings in her ear. And this acceptance is a wonderful discovery for her, so she starts hanging out at the local mall and the drive-in restaurants, because that's where the boys are. And she tells her parents she's at the movies or studying or something. In this scene, she gets caught in a lie.
Get off my back. You know, you're always at me, Mom.
I'm at you because I think I know what you're doing.
You don't know anything. And I'm not doing anything.
Connie, Laura's mother called this morning. She made Mom nervous.
And you believe her and not me?
If I ever catch you fooling around, young lady, I will personally...
Well, you were none too careful yourself, were you? I mean, like, you're some example to try to tell me... You make me want to laugh.
The movie takes a strange and threatening turn when an older local man, played by Treat Williams, notices her, starts to follow her, and turns up on Quiet Sunday with a friend when she's alone at home.
Don't you want to go for a ride?
Kind of doubt it.
Why not?
I got things to do.
Like what?
Thanks.
Connie, you're not telling the truth. Today's your day set aside to go for a ride with me, and you know it.
That's what you think my name is?
It's Connie.
Maybe and maybe not.
Definitely maybe. I know my Connie. I've been watching you.
I do not want to give away the very delicate and subtle ending of Smooth Talk by saying too much about what happens later in the movie after that scene, but I will say this. After all the silly and empty-headed movies we've seen recently about teenage sex, all the movies which have completely forgotten the special innocence and vulnerability and uncertainty of the teenage years, here is a movie that is serious and thoughtful and effective. It's based on a short story. It was written by Joyce Carol Oates. It was directed by Joyce Chopra, and maybe the fact that it's by two women helps it to be so much more sensitive about the life of this young girl. That and the absolutely convincing performances by Laura Dern and by Treat Williams in this movie.
Yeah, that last line at the end might throw people off and think this is some kind of threatening horror film, and we should clear that up. Absolutely not. In a way, it's a horror film that, in the sense of how horrifying the adolescent years can be. I think this movie is very clued into, and the performance is beautifully done by this young actress, of just how terrifying those years are. You're completely at sea. You don't know what you're doing. Your body is telling you to do things, your mind can't keep up with it. Your mind is telling you to do things and you can't control your body. I think this movie knows the teenage years better than just about any movie I've seen in a long time, except for a French film called À Nos Amours, which is also very wise about a similar girl with similar kinds of sexual things going on in her life. And not being sure
It's a very wise film and a very subtle film. And as I came out of the film, I thought, well, first of all, I was surprised by what happened.
Yes, I know.
And then I thought, well, what can I make of that? What statement are they making? And finally, I realized how original this film is in the sense that it's really not making a broad statement about adolescent girls. It is, like the good short story that it's based on, a story about the particular things that happen on this particular day with these particular characters, and I will not soon forget them.
Well, okay, you say it's particular. I think that this sort of thing can happen to a lot of people in a generic sense.
The feeling, yes, is generic. Yes, that's true. The episode is particular.
Okay.
Right.
Coming up next at the movies, a teenage boy and an old man share their love of the blues.
I'm built for comfort, not built for speed. Got everything you good girls need. See me coming, throw your man outdoors. May not get...
I'll say one good thing about Crossroads right away. I'm absolutely stunned it was made. It celebrates blues music. It doesn't have any sex in it, really. Contains very little violence. And it's a lot about hero worship. Now, these are not the trendy subject of most of today's movies. In fact, I don't think any one of those is a trendy subject of today's movies. Crossroads gets off, though, to an endlessly slow, predictable start as young Ralph Macchio befriends and frees a legendary blues musician from an old people's home. He should get him out of the home in about 5 or 10 minutes. We know it's coming. It takes about 30. Finally, though, they hit the road together to Mississippi in search of a missing classic blues song. And along the way, Ralph Macchio meets a runaway girl with a chip on her shoulder. They become friends and visit a black bar in the South where the old man is making his first stage appearance in years.
Hey, call me Willie. Hey, call me Willie. Blind dog Fulton, Smokehouse Brown. Call me Willie, the one and only Willie Brown. I'm built for comfort, not built for speed. Got everything you good girls need. See me coming, throw your man outdoors. May not get this way no more. Call me Willie, the one and only Willie Brown.
Toward the end of the picture, Crossroads turns into a battle for self-respect as the old man and Ralph Macchio meet a devilish figure from the old man's past, a figure who has a hammerlock on the old man's life.
I got a big white fella from Memphis made a deal with me a few years back. Real good guitar player, named Jack Butler. Cuts heads every Saturday night, yes, sir. He discourages a lot of up-and-coming boys.
Yeah, but Willie doesn't even play guitar.
Oh, yeah. Forgot that. Ain't that too bad? Guess there ain't much hope at all for Willie Brown. Unless you might want to sit in for him.
That wind is devilish. That, of course, leads to a showdown where Ralph Macchio has to learn to stop worshiping the blues legends of the past and start making his own music. What no one realizes is he has been studying at the Juilliard School of Music in New York City, so he is pretty good, and he blows him away in that scene. It's a good scene. Crossroads is sweet, and some of the music scenes have a genuine escapist joy. That one did, and that Willie Brown song earlier in the film that we just saw is very good, too. But I can't recommend the film because I thought it was too preposterous at times, too much of an old-fashioned movie and not gritty enough. The young girl, I think, is a wasted character, and the devil symbolism at the end of the film was laid on a little too thick for my taste. I really wish I liked this film more because I certainly appreciate the natural charm that Ralph Macchio has, and Joe Seneca as the old blues man is good, too. It's a very close call, but I can't recommend Crossroads.
Not even close at all for me. I love this movie. If people don't go see this movie, they're going to miss a great time. This relationship between these two characters and the girl who comes in out of left field and then leaves again after they have that nice little relationship. The music is great.
The music is great.
The character is great. This kid from New York who has always idolized this guy and finally finds him.
It's the Karate Kid Part 2.
It is not, first of all, it's not the Karate Kid Part 2. Secondly, it is a well-established movie structure, which we've also seen in all the Rocky movies where you have the big showdown at the end. This time it's with guitars instead of boxing gloves.
That's what I'm talking about, predictable.
That's fine, but as a matter of fact, this movie is very original because of the specifically individual characters that it introduces to us.
The girl with the chip on her shoulder is not an original character. The old man is a one-note old man. When they play the music in this movie, Roger, first of all, let's not get into this thing where you love it and I hate it, because I didn't hate it. I'm saying it's
okay, well, I loved it.
I know you did. Fine. I'm telling you that when they play music in this movie, it's terrific.
And they play a lot of music.
And when they talk, and they talk a lot, it isn't terrific.
It is
it's
great
predictable.
because what I like, it's not predictable. One of the things I like was the fact they bring it all up to the supernatural level. That's daring. To not just
it's
make
not really supernatural. The kid went to Juilliard School of Music, so that's not supernatural.
It's pretty supernatural that he's playing his guitar against the devil. I think you'll give me that.
Well, they just throw in the devil just for an excuse. They just throw him in.
That is one of the most wonderful examples of reasoning that I've ever heard from you. It's not supernatural. They just throw in the devil.
That's right.
Next at the movies, a love story about two lonely people and some turtles that are not nearly lonely enough.
He's interested in turtles. Except the keeper. And me. And you.
Turtle Diary, and I'd like to have an audio tape of this movie because it contains some of the most precise, peculiar, and perfect dialogue I've heard in a long time. And of course, since most of those words are spoken by Glenda Jackson and Ben Kingsley, the movie hardly needs a musical score because the words themselves are music. Both Kingsley and Jackson are loners who live in London and spend a lot of time at the zoo where they grow very depressed at the sight of the giant sea turtles which have been swimming around and around in the same tank for 30 years. So in this scene, they decide to do something about it.
What would you need to make it real?
You'd need the cooperation of the keeper. You'd need crates for the turtles. You'd need a van, and you'd need a very cool head. I haven't got any of those things. Well, that's not entirely true. I might have the cooperation of the keeper. You've done this kind of thing before, have you?
No, I haven't.
You haven't touched your sandwich. You like turtles, do you?
They're in prison.
They're not alone in that.
I was listening there to the elegant precision with which Ben Kingsley said those words, the quiet humor, the understated delight with which he phrases everything that he says in this movie. Turtle Diary has a screenplay by the great playwright Harold Pinter. So, of course, it isn't just about kidnapping those turtles. In fact, the movie doesn't even end with a great turtle caper. It's about the lives of those Londoners who live in boarding houses and lead quiet and orderly existences, and every once in a while allow their anger and frustration to show through. The performances by Kingsley and Jackson are on a par with their very best work, and this is a quiet, thoughtful, funny, quick-witted movie. I loved it.
Well, one thing about the Pinter screenplay, it actually is not an original. It's an adaptation of Russell Hoban's novel, so we ought to credit for the language both men, Pinter and Russell Hoban. Roger, I thought it was a little flimsy. I was very surprised. The film marches along. We see these meek little people act out a brave act. They're mirroring the turtles in some way. I suppose the film is saying in a larger sense, let's be kind to all the turtles that we see on the street every day, the human turtles that are trapped behind glass and don't even know it. That's a noble sentiment. I caught it right away. I thought the movie was going to do something more, and I was disappointed that it was just as small as it was. The opening shots of the turtles and with Kingsley and Glenda Jackson are beautiful. They sum up the whole movie. I got the whole movie in the first 10 minutes, except for one big laugh, which I won't reveal.
Yeah, but you know, I think you're being very unfair to this movie because you're making it sound as if it's real simple. We'll free the turtles, but at the same time, here's a woman who's living in my boarding house, and she's like a turtle too, and I don't free her. It's much more complicated than that because what goes on with the left hand in this movie is what makes it wonderful. The turtle story is all the ordinary story. If this had been a Hollywood movie, it would have been about freeing the turtles. With the left hand, what he's doing with indirection over here in the side is, for example, that wonderful moment when Ben Kingsley realizes that he's in love with a woman who works in the bookstore. We didn't know it until then. He didn't know it. She didn't know it. He turns to her and says, That's a very pretty dress. And instantly, we cut to the pub, and they're talking to each other.
Yes,
the moments like that in this movie, when the spontaneous life is
Don't give another one of the other spontaneous. That moment, and there's one other, but don't you understand?
There's a lot more.
No, I think there's about two. And all I tell you is that comes out of the fact that they have been emboldened. And so we know that they're going to do bolder things, and that's how it becomes predictable.
But all you've said is you understood the movie. You still haven't got to the point whether it's any good or not.
I like movies that I can't understand until maybe at the very end, certainly at the very end, or maybe a next day. Something to think about. And you know what's true? You felt the same way about the film about the teenage girl, that you were thinking about it coming out of the theater. So there.
But that's not fair to make it that simple. This movie is a lot more subtle than that.
Oh, no, I think the other film is more subtle. Now to summarize our reactions to the movies on this show. Roger enjoyed Salvador as a character study. I thought it was well-intentioned, but a wildly overwritten political drama. And we both liked Smooth Talk. That's the film we're talking about. Despite some early awkward scenes, this film really accurately depicts the agonies of adolescence. We split, though, again on Crossroads. Roger really enjoying the blues tribute and father and son style relationship. I found a lot of the sentiment and the dialogue was overdone, preferring the joy of the music itself. One thumb up, one thumb down. And finally, another split, 3 out of 4 this week. On Turtle Diary, we split. I found the story flimsy with pieces of humor. Roger loved the characters and considers the film a small jewel.
Okay, now what I wasn't saying was the Turtle Diary is more subtle than Smooth Talk. What I was saying is more subtle than you said it was.
Oh, okay.
That was the point I was trying to make.
Of all the films, which do you think is the best?
Smooth Talk.
Smooth Talk.
Followed by Turtle Diary.
Well, at this point, they're all a piece.
Okay, that's it for this week. Next week at the movies, we're going to look at 4 more new films, including Just Between Friends, a bittersweet comedy starring Mary Tyler Moore and Ted Danson, and Highlander, a supernatural adventure starring Sean Connery and Christopher Lambert. Until then, we'll see you at the movies.